Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Today, we will explore the extraordinary power of purpose in every aspect of our lives. We are joined by a truly inspiring guest, Jade Simmons. She's a pianist, a success strategist, and the author of the groundbreaking book, Purpose, the Remix, a mind-blowing re-understanding of purpose and how it works. And we're going to dive into the realm of powerful parenting, purposeful parenting, exploring how we can apply Jade Simmons' powerful concepts to nurture our children's journey of self-discovery, growth, and fulfillment. And as all of you can imagine, I am a big proponent of purpose in parenting. Jade Simmons is no stranger to the transformative power of purpose. Through her incredible career as a concert pianist, she has touched the lives and hearts of audiences around the world with her passion, her creativity, and unwavering dedication. So now she's on a mission to help others unlock their potential and live purpose-driven lives. In her book, Jade challenges the conventional notions of purpose, inviting us to embrace a fresh perspective that can revolutionize the way we parent. Today, we'll delve into the strategies, insights, and practical tools that can empower us as parents to guide our children to a path of purpose, helping them uncover their unique gifts, talents, and passions. So get ready to be inspired and energized as we explore the intersection of purpose and parenting with the brilliant Jade Simmons. And together we'll discover how purpose can ignite a sense of meaning, authenticity, and resilience within our families. So let's jump right into this enlightening conversation and unlock the secrets of purposeful parenting. Welcome, Jade Simmons.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. I'm honored to be here.
And I am honored to have you. And, let's dive into the book for a moment. You explore a unique understanding of purpose. And so I want you to talk about the conventional way we think about purpose and then describe the remix.
Sure. Well, I made my early career as a concert pianist, as you described. And today, the majority of my time is not on a traditional concert stage. I'm brought in by major companies and brands and organizations. And one of the things I speak on is purpose. Now, just so happens a piano comes with me wherever I go, and I use music to drive my points home. And I mention that because where I started is where I thought purpose was. I thought my purpose was simply to play the piano. And that's all I wanted to do. It was my childhood dream. I just wanted to play Beethoven and Mozart and all the classics on all the best stages. And I'm so thankful that I got to do much of that. In the middle of my career, really in the very early part of my career, I started having these weird bouts of stage fright that didn't make any sense. And I always say, and I'll say this to your listeners, pay attention when things start really not making sense. I had worked really hard to be where I was. It didn't make a lot of sense that suddenly I was afraid of audiences because I hadn't been afraid of them since I was a little girl. But to get through these bouts, I know I needed to make friends with the audience. So I started telling stories in between the music. And long story, very short, that speaking that I started in my classical music career started to differentiate me very powerfully from other musicians. Then the speaking took on a life of its own, took me outside of the concert hall and took me into arenas that I normally wouldn't be in as a pianist, into the corporate world. I tell that story because in there was the remix, Carol. So I thought my purpose was to play the piano. The thing I think we get wrong is that we think our purpose is the thing that we do. Oh, my purpose is to be a teacher. My purpose is to be a doctor. And those are always usually very noble things, very wonderful things, but those are things that we do. What I discovered when I started telling those stories, people started having all these moments, getting their whole life in between the music. And they would tell me afterwards, yeah, the Chopin was great. Oh, but what you said. about
Mm.
Chopin. And in the beginning, I used to be so offended.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to be impressed by this thing I was doing, this thing I'd worked so hard to be able to do. And after getting over myself, which usually purpose requires, I realized that there was something bigger happening in that room that I hadn't been paying attention to. It's why I say your purpose is not the thing you do. Your purpose is the thing that happens in others when you do what you do. And when
Yes.
we get that switch, that's the remix. It actually frees us from the piano or from the microphone or from the stethoscope or or from the classroom, and we realize purpose goes with me wherever I go, and it's what's breaking out in others around me because it is me doing the thing that I do. So I
Hmm.
don't always have to play the piano. I can preach if I want. I don't always have to preach. I can write a book. And that's what I would love for your listeners to take away is that purpose loves to ride itself out in multiple vehicles. It's not wanting to be constrained to one thing that we think we do. It's why people chase a career and then get there and don't feel fulfilled, right? Or chase money and get it and commit suicide, right? So I believe
Mm.
we have to be able to unpack purpose from the thing because sometimes the thing's not going to go well. There were nights I didn't play well. Did that mean
Mm.
I was failing at purpose? Not
Hmm.
if people were still having the reaction they needed to have in the
Hmm.
audiences
Hmm.
that were gifted to me.
And Jade, that can be so hard because you're someone that invested a lot of time and money into what you thought was your purpose.
Yeah,
And there are probably other people that way. Maybe they've invested in graduate education, they've become a whole doctor
that's right.
and don't want to be a doctor anymore or an attorney, or just other ways, other expenses and time. They've learned a particular craft and they don't like it anymore. So
Mhm.
how did you what are some tips or that for people that to get them to unlock, because it sounds easy, but
Mhm.
really like day to day, what are one or two things they need to do right away to
Yeah.
really let go of that and look at things a different way?
Because it's a process,
Right.
and it does take time. It can happen a lot quicker if we allow it. That thing you mentioned in the beginning, the investment. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all classical musicians, we've been playing since we could barely walk for
Right.
the most part. So it's a very difficult thing to say, maybe my purpose is not to play the piano. My husband actually said that to me, and I almost left him because we've been together since we were 15. And I was like, how dare he? Because what I heard was, he doesn't think I'm good enough. What he
Mm.
clarified was, no, what I'm saying is, I don't think the piano is all of it. He said, I think the piano is going to get you into some spaces. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was pretty much preaching, right? Your gift will make room for you.
Yes.
And that's literally what it is today. This purpose gets me into rooms I have no business being in,
Mm.
doing things that people wouldn't have expected the concert pianist to be able to do. So when we talk about those practical tips, it really comes down to asking questions. Here's the good news. You didn't waste any time if you've invested all your life up until this point doing one thing and mastering a thing, because where purpose is concerned, mastery and excellence is usually a prerequisite.
Mm-hmm.
What the good news is you've been mastering other stuff that you haven't been paying attention to. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the first things we do is look at the thread that's been running through our life. And so I would say, okay, Carol, you start by going and asking the people closest to you, why is it that you love me? Why is it that you come and tell me all your business? Because we all know we have the friends who, and they will come tell us
Mm-hmm.
everything. You want to
Yes.
know why it is they come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll start to hear a theme. Well, I come to Carol because she's going to tell me the hard stuff that I kind of knew, but I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear it. And you'll
Mm-hmm.
hear that theme play itself out. My daughter is a very joyous person, and she brings humor, whether she means to or not, into every room. She brings buoyancy into every room. And so we've been working to protect that.
Mm.
Listen, we don't always feel like the bubbly stuff. And our nature as humans is to tamp others down when they're invading our space. And so, as parents and as her big brother, we're always mindful, or I want them to be even more mindful of, make sure you're not shutting her down, because she needs to know what it feels like to operate in her natural, given organic personality type, because in there, purpose probably is hiding. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to look at ways that you naturally behave. I've worked with people who have been called hypercritical, and we take a look back and we say, okay, have you been hypercritical, or have you been noticing the things that others haven't noticed? Is it
Mm-hmm.
that you tend to see when the bar is too low, when the standard isn't high enough?
Mm-hmm.
Might it be that a part of your purpose is to go into spaces and see the things that others have missed
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of increasing efficiency or creating better systems? Now, once we start to see those patterns, the onus is on us to
Mm-hmm.
lean into how we deliver that gift. So if we want to go from hypercritical to being the standard bearer that we really want in the room, there's a difference in the way we must deliver that information, right? So it's asking these questions and also investigating back and seeing how you've always been behaving. And you'll see there's been an effect that you've always had on people.
Mm-hmm.
That effect is the thing you want to now begin to practice on purpose into the future.
I like that you talk about that because I have twin sons who are
Yeah.
now 23 years old.
Wow.
And that was something, even when they were younger, I hadn't gotten into this parenting thing. As a matter of
Sure.
fact, I thought I was like in way over my head with these twins at this point.
Oh my
But the
God.
thing is, I noticed their personalities, and that's what actually made me want to take parenting classes because
Wow.
one son just ran headfirst into the unknown
Yeah.
with walking, with anything. And he was funny, and you really had to spend a lot of time with him. He was what you would call high maintenance. You really had
Okay.
to pay a lot of attention to him. And then my other son was more laid back, and he's actually the older twin by a minute.
Wow.
And and it's almost as if he noticed his brother and was like, "Yeah, let him go ahead and let him entertain you. That's not my thing." And so I knew that both of them had innate traits that in the right situation would be
Okay.
very useful. And so and that's what I was worried about. I didn't want to tamp down any of their natural tendencies. I wanted to be able to channel them into ways that would be useful for them. So I knew that, my son that was more outspoken, that could be useful for him in school and his career and all of that. He just needs to learn. Maybe there's some situations where that's
That's
not
it.
appropriate. And then my other son, he was very quiet, but he was very observant
Mhm.
and could really take the temperature in the room, what was going on. Because sometimes when I was really, really stressed and I'd have him on the changing table, changing his diaper or whatever, any other time he's looking around, doing whatever. But if I was really kind of stressed, not saying anything or anything, he would make direct eye contact with me. I mean, he would
Wow.
really be looking. And so what we found later on is he is very observant about where he is. And what do you want to tell teenagers, like when they're going out and going to parties or things where
That's
you're
it.
not there? It's like, be mindful of the exits, be
That's right.
mindful of the vibe. The party might start off okay, but then people might bring, alcohol or drugs in and things change. You need to be aware of that. And he is that guy.
Ah.
And
See, and that's that purposeful piece, because, and I think maybe the difference, the little bit I've been able to listen to how you coach, that awareness is key, isn't it? It's not that purpose and personality give us permission to do whatever the heck we want.
Mhm.
They give us understanding of how we're built. And then the onus is on us, right? As I say to my daughter, okay, we want to be able to encourage this bubbly side of you as often as possible, but you're going to have to learn to read the room. When it is after 9 p.m. and everybody is coming down, pay attention, right? And we're going to do our best not to squash you, but you also need to be mindful and be respectful of other people's space and what they might need in their space at that time. And I think that is a little bit of the difference of some of the kind of coaching or teaching you'll see where we just let kids be without those parameters. I think that awareness,
Mhm.
and that's what purpose start is, an awareness how you've been behaving and how naturally we're designed to behave. I'm an activator, so I thought my purpose was to play the piano. I learned later that my purpose was to activate boldness and big behavior in others. It just so happened the vehicle for that sometimes was the piano. The vehicle for that activation is often speaking or writing or preaching or whatever. So that activation purpose gets to ride out with me. And so I think even with kids, making them aware of how they are naturally and how, like you said, how is that skill useful? How is that personality beneficial? With my daughter, we've talked about, I think the swing side of that is sometimes because we've become dependent on her buoyancy, she doesn't always feel like she can be sad or she can show, that she's feeling down today or not as peppy. And so we've had to, help her understand you don't owe us. You don't owe us anything.
Right.
But your purpose allows you to function in this way, and you get to decide, what version of it presents here and what part of it you get to take with you. And I think that's the power of purpose. It does two things. Instantly, it gives us this meaning and understanding of how we are, how we're privileged to behave on this earth. It also frees us up from worrying about what people think of us, because we know I'm designed to activate. You may not be activated by me. You may not like how I activate, but that's what I'm designed to do. And, gosh darn it, I'm going to do it in any room that I'm in, and it will look different in other rooms. But so it does that thing where it immediately gives us meaning to other people, but it also frees us from people. I like to say that I care about people too much to be stopped by them. That's been the biggest purpose, that piece of freedom that purpose has given me, is that it tells me how I can dress, how I can behave, what I get to say yes to. Because if I can see purpose in it, I'll say yes to it. If I only see talent, skill, gift, and obligation, I often say no. So if someone calls and says, hey, can you come play? We had this recently. We see you're going to be at this event. Can you just play a little background music at the dinner? No to that. Can I? Yeah, I could. I could play a mean piano in the background, right? but my actual purpose is not just to provide music. My purpose is to provide activation. So when I don't see that activation available, we say no to it.
Yeah, and it is freeing and clarifying. I had an opportunity for a speaking engagement, a repeat speaking engagement at a conference that I did early in the pandemic. And so that same person asked me to come back. And so their focus really is speaking directly to young people themselves, whereas my purpose is really parenting. And I hate to say that because it almost makes it sound like I don't like kids or something, but it's not that. And so are some of my bullet points applicable? Could they be changed?
That's right.
And so I just felt myself, I just felt like I was contorting myself to make this work. And so ultimately, I ended up sending her an email and just saying, thank you so much. And I really love what you're doing. And I enjoyed speaking a few years ago and all of that. I really do normally. My message is really primarily for parents. And if you have any parent engagement programs in the future, I hope you will consider me. And,
that's rare behavior. That's rare behavior, Carol. So most people spend their whole lives contorting. And they contort so far that they don't even, either they don't get to discover or they don't remember what they did discover. So when you find out that, listen, yeah, I can, you're an incredible speaker. You could speak to anybody about probably any topic if we gave you enough time to prepare. But then the question is, are we doing things because we can, because we want to, because we like to, or are we operating in purpose that we're called to? And if we start to think of our minutes on earth as being finite, that will determine, is it really okay to spend a day in a room that I can be in, but I'm not really designed for? Or could that time be better used in the life center of purpose elsewhere? And that's the question. And I think women in particular, and especially moms, we've had to grow so many arms. We've gotten used to saying yes,
and making stuff work.
That's right. That's right.
We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than ProPix by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With ProPix, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the social starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of ProPix by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. ProPix by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPix by P411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
So I think that it's rare behavior. And I talk about this in the book. Look, you go through all of this, I think I really do help people get to purpose pretty quickly in the book, but you do all that work, you get there. Now you got to protect it.
Yes.
And one of the ways we protect it is by making sure that we're stewarding our time so that we can spend the large majority of that time in purpose. And I know that sounds easier said than done. And you may start at a place where, listen, Jade, I got to pay the bills. I've got this obligation on my time. I've got twin boys and they're all in 5 different sports. And so you'll be able to take stock of where your life is now.
Mm-hmm.
How much time am I spending in the life center of purpose? And as parents, parenting is purposeful, but it's not always the full story of what purpose is for you. And usually what we'll see is there's a way that Carol raised her twins that only she could do because of the purpose in her. And that I would raise my kids only the way that I can raise them because of the purpose that's in me. So if I know I'm an activator, I also look to my kids to say, how am I activating them? Am I activating them? And so it's that combination of things, right? Not only uncovering purpose, but then deciding to really walk in it. And then saying over time, I want to shift my life so that more of my activities are in purpose, not just purposeful. And that is a difference.
I like that. So let's talk about what made you decide to present all of this to us in a book.
Well, you said it earlier when you talk about, people will start making all these moves. They'll start, I've got this exciting feeling. I'm going to move on it. I've got this gift. I'm going to go on it. And so I was saying that purpose statement on stages all over the world. Your purpose is not the thing you do, dramatic drum roll. Your purpose is the thing that happens in others when you do
what you do.
And people were getting their whole life, Carol, on that one statement. We would get emails. Oh my gosh, you were here yesterday and I quit my job today. Or I launched a new business, or I joined missions. And we're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening? So what was powerful, right, was those 23 words were really wrecking people in this powerful way, because they were like, oh my gosh, I've been at this job for 35 years. I always felt, you said it, something's not quite right, or something's a little off. And then they would hear this statement and just jump. I am a bold leaper. You've heard me speak and talk about free falling in faith. I love quick obedience. But after 8 years of people telling me they were making these big moves, I thought,
they need some guidance.
I need to write the guidebook. I need to fill this thing out. And so over the last year or so, I really felt an urgency to put the whole story down on paper. And so the book is not a long one because I didn't want you to have to spend 6 months. You've already spent your whole life looking for a purpose. I wanted you to get to it quickly.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted people to understand two things, that it was simpler than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose wasn't something we had to go out and find. People say, I have to find my purpose. No, actually, you discover it from within. Most of us have already been operating in it, and we just haven't recognized it as purpose, usually because it comes so second nature. Another question I like to tell people to ask is, what happens when you walk in the room? Now, I like to have you ask other people, because sometimes we have a perception or we know how we want to be perceived.
True.
Really ask them what happens. And sometimes you'll find out things. People will say, well, when you get there, everything's going to be okay. Or when you arrive, things are going to calm down. Or when you get in, the party has started. Like, it's not a party until you arrive. Or when you ask people, why do they tell you their secrets? Why do they come to you? I know in my friend circle, I noticed for years, they weren't coming to me with a lot of stuff. And it was the stuff that they knew I was going to either see through or say, listen, you're bigger than this, or why are we doing this? But lo and behold, when things were usually right at rock bottom, or when they had run out of solutions, that's when I would get a call. And the advice I tended to give was usually hard hitting, but often very clarifying, and often caused a change in perspective. And I can see that in my personal relationships, my relationship with my husband, with my kids. I can see it on the stages I'm in. And when you start paying attention, then you go, wait a minute, I'm designed to come in and shift perspectives, right? So it's not that it's just an accident. You go, oh my gosh, this happens so much, I got to pay attention to it. And then you get to go, wait a minute, what if I do this on purpose in advance before anybody asks me? So I now know in a room, if I'm in a conversation, let's say with a bunch of leaders, and I'm out of place, maybe it's a bunch of CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, and I'm the concert pianist in the room. Well, I can rest assured of at least one thing. Whatever conversation we're having, I'm probably designed to shift the perspective. So now I'm listening differently, right? In that moment. So purpose has that power to give us this incredible level of understanding of why we are and why we're where we are. And so the book really takes us through all the ways that purpose has been waiting with bated breath to get to play this large role in our lives. But it's what you talked about earlier, that contorting that keeps us just on the left side of purpose, right? And then especially as do-gooders, we feel good in all the things we're doing, and that must be purpose. I'm an incredible mom. I spend 250 hours a week on my kids. That must be purpose, because there's not time for anything else. But to look back and say, what's happening in my kids because I'm their mom, because I'm their dad. And then unpacking that thing. You might notice your kids tend to be less fearful when they talk to you. Your kids tend to have greater understanding when they talk to you. Then you begin to go, look, my relationship with my son must be, I'm there to provide greater understanding than what he already has. It starts to really allow us to unlock some superpowers and really begin to walk in them, knowing that it's what we're called to do and how we're called to behave.
Now, I know you've been walking around with this remixed purpose in your back pocket for quite a while, probably. But did you find that writing the book kind of had you re-examine or tweak some things that maybe you wouldn't have expected? Like, you didn't just sit down and write this book, but what kind of self-transformation happened?
Yeah, this stuff has been in me. I said that statement over 8 years ago, but since then I've been doing a lot of coaching of other people. So in many ways, the writing was overdue. It was like all the coaching techniques, all the discoveries I'd made about the connections between purpose, destiny, passion, breakthrough, and success were ready to come out. I think what I didn't understand, maybe it's not that I didn't understand it, but I think what was shocking to me in writing it is I kept thinking I needed to write more. I kept thinking I needed to explain more. And I think what was shocking to me is that it really is simpler than even I thought. And I think in terms of the self transformation, the other part that I knew is I couldn't unpack purpose from anything that I believe where my faith was concerned. And so there's a point in the book where I'm really explicit about the connection between purpose and higher purpose, or purpose and God's purpose, and what that looks like. And that was very freeing for me to have validation. I spend 95% of my time in a non-church based world. I'm in, corporate world most of the time, in secular spaces. And it was really kind of wonderful to be affirmed that, once again, I don't have to separate these parts. To see that all written out. And I've been telling people, you don't have to choose one thing. You do have to choose purpose. And that'll be the one thing that then focuses everything. But it was like reconfirmation that I was who I am called to be. I am currently behaving how I'm called to behave. And so it's almost like, you write a book and then you got to check yourself against it, right? Like, am I doing all of these things? And that, I think, was the really powerful realization to go, wow, I really am behaving how I'm designed to behave, and it feels so good. And just kind of knowing that I want at least 1 billion people to know what that feels like, not just because of the numbers, but because I truly believe that the uncovering of purpose means that I'm able to offer solutions I wouldn't have offered if I was still stuck in a life of dream, right? I was a concert pianist, so I was living the dream, but I wasn't impacting nearly as many people as I'm called to impact. So it's like this thing of, I can have my childhood dream, or I can have my God-sized adult destiny.
Okay.
and I want to have, one feels good, one is good. And so that kind of epiphany of knowing, wait a minute, I'm practicing what I preach here. And I want to unlock this, because if those are solutions that are coming out of me, one person who's uncovered purpose, what happens if 1 billion people on earth uncover their own purpose? They're going to have solutions locked up in them. And I think a lot of our world issues, a lot of the cures to diseases that we've been living with too long, are locked up in people who have yet to uncover purpose.
And that's really, that kind of gave me goosebumps when you first said billions of people. And I was like, wow, if we had billions of people doing this self-examination and coming out on the other side, really understanding their purpose, what a world this could be. Because we have a lot of people that have no direction. And, like Dr. George Fraser says, and I'm paraphrasing, but in essence, he talks about people who have no direction or who are going nowhere want to take you with them. And so it just has an impact on people when you're around people and you're misguided and you're telling people what to do or how it needs to be. It can be very destructive. But if we got everybody operating in purpose, on purpose, we could solve a lot of the problems we have.
I haven't said this out loud anywhere, so this is a new statement, first said.
Okay.
on the Parenthood 411. But we're building a recording space here in Houston, and the route that I have to take to get to where my new studio will be passes this huge area where there are lots of homeless people, and Houston has a pretty significant homelessness issue. And it's been tickling my brain as I watch them gather, because what you just said, right? That you're going to take a lot of people with you. And I watch these homeless humans gather together, all sort of resigned. You can see this is what life is. We live here under this bridge. This is what it is. And it makes me wonder, what would an infusion of purpose change where homelessness is concerned, where single mothers who are struggling on government assistance, trying to make ends meet? What changes if there is the time? Because the truth is, it's a luxury to have the time to read, the time, the money to have the resource to buy a book. We take a lot of these things for granted. But what if purpose could be taken out and taught to groups like this, who purpose is the last thing? They're like, listen, I'm trying to find
survival.
my next, right? Where purpose feels like this luxury, but I don't believe it's a luxury. I believe it is mandatory for a powerful existence on this earth. And so one of the things that I think I'm going to be leaning into in the near future is looking at what does it look like to take purpose intentionally to groups who haven't had the luxury of personal or professional development or self-discovery. What would that look like and what would it change? I believe instinctively that it would change a lot because I believe that, purpose is God-given. And I believe over time we cover it up
Right.
with all the demands of life. So when I hear you say that, that when we don't have direction, we take a lot of people with us. So what happens when we do? What happens when we do? So I'll keep you posted on these social experiments that I'm looking forward to leaning into.
That would be very powerful, I tell you. Now, I want to say too, you have talked a couple of times about the book and saying that it's simple and it's small, it's short, relatively speaking, when you think about the topic that you're tackling. But what I love about it is that, no word is wasted. It's just, so often it's small, but every word, you're hanging on every word. I'm like, how did she do that? And you don't read books like that very often, large or small, where the author just does not waste a lot of your time. I recently read a book with a guest, written by a guest, and he was talking about reaching toddler milestones. And his book was that way too. And I was like, that's 4 books, because I studied all this stuff when my children were younger, and learning a lot about child development and parenting and all of that. And that's like at least 4 or 5 books that I read, but you have it in there. So I want to definitely commend you on being able to do that with that topic of purpose. It's so rich, and I really hope people will grab it, especially parents. But I want to talk about how parents, sometimes struggle with balancing their own goals and ambitions while supporting their children's discovery of purpose. So how can they align their purpose, with their child's journey to discovery, and just really kind of create an environment where both can thrive for everyone in the family?
That's a really great discussion to have. As an extremely ambitious artist coming out of school, I knew exactly what I wanted in my career. And in the beginning, my biggest concern is that when we started having children, my husband and I, it was simply going to be an interruption. And I remember at the beginning just denying the size of my life that was about to be taken over by childbearing and having kids. And so my first couple of years as a parent, I think I was trying to pretend that it didn't mean anything was going to change, and I learned very quickly that was not the case. A lot of stuff was going to change. And I think the most powerful thing I could have ever done when my son was about 4 or 5 years old, was realize how important it was to include him as a child in what mommy was doing, so that he could begin to understand early on that what mommy does is important, not just because it's something that brings in money or because she's ambitious, but that this is a part of who mommy is. What mommy is doing, it has to do with who mommy is. And so a lot of what I've tried to do, at least with my kids, is to help them understand the work that I do. And then it also helps them understand why I'm so serious about the work that they do. I would be lying if I didn't say I had to go through a lot of reformation, Carol, as a recovering, overachieving child. My instinct was to place the burden of that ridiculously high level achievement on both of my kids right away. And my son is the complete opposite of me, very laid back, doesn't worry about winning. Winning was everything to me. I literally, as a kid, threw out any ribbon that wasn't a blue ribbon. I only kept first and second place. Okay. I didn't keep any. I was just so achievement oriented and driven. And I remember trying to place that burden on my son and him saying, mommy, sometimes we can just come and have fun. And I thought, get behind me, Satan. What is this? Who is this spawn? Who had this boy? And I could write a whole book. I would call it Raising Jaden, because I feel like he raised me. He reframed me. And so I think now the balance is about showing the passion I have for my work, and then showing an equal level of passion for who they are as humans, and who they are as students, and who they are as budding artists. That has been what the balance has looked like, is showing the same inspiration and passion I want to go give to the world. I must also give that at home, but I must also make space for you to be who you need to be. And you need to see that it is as important to me that you become who you're designed to become, as it is me focusing on who I'm designed to become. And then I would say the biggest tip I have had for myself and for others where time is concerned is being really open and honest about the help that you need.
Yes.
And being open and honest about the season you're in.
Mm.
So, if you're like me, people assume I'm an extrovert because I spend a lot of my life on a stage, but I'm probably more of an ambivert and very much a homebody, and I love being by myself.
Me
I
too.
love being by myself. And that's a challenge for a married person with kids, right? But I love being by myself. And my natural instinct when I'm busy is to turn inward, focus in, and block everything out. And I had
Mm.
to become more adept at telling my family, hey, I'm going into a pretty intense season where mommy's building stuff from scratch. So you may have to call me more than once, or my husband would get frustrated because he'd be saying my name or telling me something, and I have not heard anything because I'm in the zone. So I've had to say to him, did I respond to you? Did I give you eye contact? And he was like, no. I said, well, then I heard nothing. So don't hold that against me. So kind of teaching
Hmm.
family the modes of what mommy's going through, and then how to access me if I seem cut off. Just, my daughter as a kid, you talk about your son being instinctive and observant.
Hmm.
I remember we were watching television together, but I was really working,
Right.
like on my phone and
Hmm.
pretending to watch. And she must have been, I don't even think she was really 2 years old. I remember her constantly taking my chin
Ah.
and lifting it up. She
Mm.
understood you're here, but you're not present. And
Hmm.
to this day, if she feels like I'm not listening, she'll do that. So I guess all that to say, really open communication about what season you're in. And I usually will make a bargain. Hey, for the next 3 months, this is kind of how mommy's focused. But after that, here's what we can look forward to. And it helps my family know this is not our life for the rest of our life, but this is the season that's important to mommy. This is how we can support her. And then she's also going to turn around and support us as we need it, as our seasons shift as well.
Right. And I think it is very important for parents to understand seasons in
Yeah.
parenting. Like, that was something that was hard for me in the very beginning because I really only thought I was going to be home for 4 months, 6 months tops after I had the boys. And then, of course, I fell in love with them. It was hard work, but I fell in love with them and it kind of kept extending to a year and then went in and like, I'm not coming back. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
but at the same time, I struggled because I had no plans to be a stay-at-home mom. If anything, I planned not to be a stay-at-home mom. Like I just
Right.
couldn't relate to it. My mom had a career, my friends' moms had careers and all of that. So I just like was not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so, making that choice after, having gone to graduate school and all of that. I mean, even my husband was like, the choice will be yours because we met in graduate school and he was like, I sat next to you. I know how hard you worked. I'm not going to
That's
ask
right.
you. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But if you want to do that, then, of course, I'll support your decision. And so that's really how that happened. But it took me a while to really just lean into that season because I saw all of my classmates doing all this stuff,
Yes.
in their careers. And, I'm going to and yeah,
Yeah.
right, and wearing mom jeans and all that stuff. And so
Yeah.
and I had to just
And do you know, and I think this will be helpful for the parents listening in, at that time, my son was 5 when my daughter came along, and I intentionally stayed home almost
Mm-hmm.
that whole first year with her, and he was starting kindergarten. There were things we learned about him, learning issues that he had, some
Mm-hmm.
social issues that I would have missed, I'm pretty sure, had I been on the road the same way I had been when he was a baby. And that was such a big learning experience when you talk about that balance of life's not about proving I can do something. But that same purpose of activating, I now had a year to activate my son, right?
Right.
What is it that he needs? And there's purpose in that. The book, one of the reasons it's easy to read, the whole beginning is characters, these sort
Mm-hmm.
of fictional
Yeah, I
characters,
remember.
family members who know, they're like, hey, is that me? I see a little bit of myself in there. There's closets of people, and probably every one of those characters has a piece of me in it. And most people say, oh, I think I'm this character. Then I read the next one and go, wait, I'm this character. But they all are sort of close to purpose.
Right.
And we get to see how they live their lives out. And it will hit because we go, oh my gosh, I do the same thing. And one
Mm-hmm.
woman is a mother. questions, ask and answer questions for themselves about who they are and how they were made. With my son, we noticed very early on, he would be fearful about trying things because he was averse to trying new things. He would get in his routine, and that was
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to shake him. But I remember one time he opted out of something that was really fun, and he regretted it. I mean, for 3 or 4 days afterwards, he cried about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What is that? What are you feeling?" And he said, "I just wish I had done it." I said, "Oh, that's called regret." And I said, "So what you need to understand is that you might be motivated by fear of regret. And so going forward, when we would have to make big decisions that required change, the question to him was, okay, if you do this, will you enjoy it? I don't know. If you don't do it, will it really bother you that you didn't try?" And if his answer was, "Oh my gosh, I would be so upset if I didn't try," then he knows he has to try it. Other
Mm-hmm.
times he goes, "No, I think I'll be okay." And then he's fine. But it's causing him to have to constantly not just react and behave, but
Mm-hmm.
really become more aware, that word again, of how we're responding to the world. And are we designed to respond a certain way? And if so, we can take ownership of that, or we can say, you know what? I can behave or move in a different way. I can make a different choice. So that communicating not just to them, but causing them to communicate for themselves, that's been something I've tried to stick to quite a bit.
Yes, and that's just such a great way to cultivate self-awareness early on. And then also, I also heard in what you were describing a little bit of emotion coaching as well, which I
Yeah,
think is
yeah,
good, like putting a name on, the regret, which,
that's right.
younger children, they don't know what that is. They know happy, glad, mad, sad, and,
That's right.
that's
Yeah.
it. But there are other things. There's embarrassment, disrespect, feeling disrespected, all these other things. And so I like that you introduce that to him,
Yeah.
at an early age, just even the concept of regret. So, you talked about decisions and really teaching him how to weigh decisions ultimately. And so, we as parents have to make a lot of decisions because we have our eye on the future, and, we still have to, and, we have to kind of restrain ourselves sometimes in terms of not leading them in places that would make us look good or make us feel good or allow them to check a box that we didn't get to check.
That's right.
So,
Karate was it for me. Mine was like, you are going to be a black belt because mommy never was. Yes.
right. So how can parents use the concept of purpose to guide them in making these important decisions and making sure they do align with their children's purpose, of course, but their strengths and their passions?
Yeah, there's a whole section getting towards the end of the book where we talk about protecting purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds funny, but sometimes you'll have to protect your purpose from other people's dreams for you,
Mm-hmm.
including your parents. My father and mother spent a lot of money on my classical music education.
Right.
And so when I started infusing other genres, especially hip hop
Yeah.
and rap, and it's funny, my father's a civil rights activist, of course, very attuned to the Black community, and introduced me to all these types of music. But when I started mixing my classical with hip hop, he was so concerned. Like, wait a minute, you're the Black female. You can't, I don't know if you can do this. And it was funny hearing that coming from my dad. But he didn't want me to mess something up that we had worked so hard to build.
Mm-hmm.
Now today, he is so proud to say, my daughter mixes all the genres and she won awards for this eclectic stuff. But in the beginning, he was trying to protect me and protect the vision, or at least what I said I wanted to be. He was trying to protect that. And I think, as parents, we have to remember, and I'm talking to myself every time I say this, Carol, so please don't think I've mastered it. But we have to remind ourselves that children each have individual purposes that have nothing to do with us.
Right.
We get to be the good stewards as parents that help them uncover purpose and walk in it. And I have to surrender that on a daily basis, even having kids who are artists, naturally artists. We had this discussion at the dinner table, Carol, where I was telling my kids, my mother plays piano.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and played in church and had the gift of playing by ear and played gospel, but she never played classical. She never would have had access to the stages that I played on. And I said, and I worked really hard to get where I got. My kids sort of woke up knowing how to play. Literally, my son taught himself, and my daughter was singing harmonies in her little, car seat. Nope, they didn't have any lessons. And I said, so if you watch that increase in acceleration from generation to generation, so there is a gifting that passes through, but that doesn't mean I get to lay on you the dreams I had for my classical career, or make you study classical because that's what we're taught everybody should do. And that's been a constant release, a resurrendering of that. God will say to me often, Jade, they were mine before they were yours.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, you're right. So I'm constantly, that's why I say re-surrendering their futures. And this, you're talking to someone who has been planning her future since she could talk. Benchmarks, everything laid out. I know you understand what I'm talking about. And it's been difficult to balance the responsibility of parenting. We do have to consider some things. I tell my son a lot, there are things that you don't understand that are coming that we have to make sure you're ready for. They don't mean anything to you now, but when you get there, they will. And you said it earlier, they get it later. And there are things now that he complains about that I'll say, remember when we tried to get you to do this or learn this and you refused? That's actually what you're complaining about now. So we don't want to make that mistake again. So when we tell you that you are going to have a whole summer of swimming lessons because you have not mastered it as you thought you had, we are doing that because in 5 years, when you're on a boat with your friends, because his circle of friends are the friends who have boats. They're going to be out on boats, and we can go on a whole other podcast episode of young Black kids and the things they have to be more aware of. But I'm saying, so if you're the one who falls over the side, I need to know that you can swim to the edge, get where you need to go. If your sister's with you, I got to know you know how to rescue her. I got to think about things that you're not thinking about because you're like, I'm just going to sit by the pool for a few hours. Well, but maybe in 5 years you won't. So I think there is that balance, right, of preparing them to be equipped to handle the future, but releasing the actual outcome of what their future will look like back to the God who created them. That's a whole other podcast, yeah?
That is. I might be bringing you back on that one.
Let's do it.
So as we kind of wrap up a little bit, what practical strategies or activities, and I would add maybe conversations, that parents could incorporate into their daily lives to kind of nurture purposeful parenting and just create an environment where their children can thrive and discover their true potential? Like, what could they start doing today after they listen to this podcast?
Become the annoying child that keeps asking why. I
have one.
Right. And then begin to ask your kids, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? It's what you said earlier, Carol, fostering self-awareness. Listen, not only is that good for your child as a human and the family that he or she may have one day, it is crucial for the world we are in. One of the biggest things we're lacking is self-awareness and awareness and empathy for others. So when my daughter complains about some kid at school who's been annoying, I always ask her, why do you think that is? And sometimes we'll get back to the fact that, oh my gosh, he's a new kid. Nobody's really been his friend. He's really needing attention. What would it look like if you treated him a different way tomorrow at school, right? That's very different than starting out by saying, oh, I see what's going on here. Here's what's going on with Tommy, right? But to be able to say, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? That's the one question I would say, put on repeat, especially depending on when you're listening to this, but in the summertime, it's a good time where we have a little more proximity to the kids. Cause them to ask questions and they will become curious. And I think curiosity is probably the number one thing you need to uncover purpose in yourself and to help others uncover purpose in themselves.
I love that. So what's coming up next for you?
Well, we are so excited about the little book that could. We are really set on this idea of how many hands can we get it in. So we're looking at touring Purpose the Remix, a wonderful concert and
Okay.
inspirational experience, taking that on tour. And then what we're doing all the time is inviting visionary women of faith to join us in my community called Designer Growth Club, which is where, you finish reading that book, you're going to be ready to go. Think about it. If I was just saying those 23 words and people were leaping, you finish reading this, you're going to want the life that was promised to you by purpose. And so we welcome you to join us as we walk it out together in Designer Growth Club. And we're just excited to see where this leads. We're planning a big live event in Houston in 2024,
Okay.
Purpose and Power event. But purpose is pretty much going to be the name of the game for quite some time. I have some other aspirations unrelated to music and speaking that I believe purpose is going to be, the throughway, the channel into those areas. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears open, and you can learn more at jadesimmons.com and stay connected with me there.
Yes, that was my next thing to ask to ask you to tell everybody how they can follow what you're doing and also give them your social media handles as well.
That's right. On Instagram, that's where I hang out the most. That's at official Jade Simmons. I'm there a lot. And at Purpose the Remix has its own Instagram profile as well. And you'll see some really powerful live interviews. In fact, if you want to talk to me about your purpose, meet me over there at Purpose the Remix. And I do these lives on Fridays where people come on, and it's funny, in just those few minutes we're able to get to purpose, and you see a lot of tears, a lot of laughter, because it literally is just a couple of questions that twist things, and we're able to investigate backwards and see, oh my gosh, I have always been doing this and now I get to do it intentionally. So it's been powerful to watch people's lives kind of reshaped right before their eyes. But I love to hang out on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well. And if you go to jadesimmons.com, you'll see all of my handles where you can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter.
Okay,
Too.
well, I didn't know about that other handle, so I'm going to definitely
Yeah.
look at that because I would definitely enjoy watching that. And thank you so much for joining me. It's just really a pleasure talking with you. And I just really want my listeners to hear your message. I want them to grab the book. Please go to jadesimmons.com. Isn't that what you said?
Right.
Yes, I promise you, grab the book. It is really worth the read and worth the thought and the time that she calls you to put into examining your life, what the way you're living it versus the way you could be living it, and the impact that you could be having. I think you will definitely be transformed. You'll definitely be changed by reading the book. And as always, I love our listeners. I don't take it lightly that you tune in to the Parenting 411 podcast. I ask you also to head on over to bit.ly Family First 2023. We have all access passes for the Parent and Purpose Summit replay of the Family First edition that we had back in February. People have been asking for it. They said they missed it the first time around. So we have all access passes that you can sign up for. You will be able to access the expertise of 15 speakers, and they had bonuses in there. The Parenting 411 is also giving you bonuses along with the lifetime access. So head on over there to bit.ly/Family First 2023. And also continue to follow at the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, because you'll also hear about the back to school edition of the Parent and Purpose Summit that's coming up in August. And always remember that it is never too late to be the parent you want to be. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you again, Jade Simmons.